So now you've got your chords track along with your drum beat. The next step is going to be to add in a bass. To add a bass part, first of all, let's add a new track by clicking Add Track, and then I'm going to choose Instruments from the menu that appears here to add another software instrument using either my piano keyboard in school, or if you're at home, you can use your computer keyboard to play in those bass parts again. Now we're going to look for a bass sound before we start. The bass sounds are in a different section to piano, so let's click on where it says piano and now choose synth bass. There is a section just called bass, which is for like bass guitars, which is really good for a more rocky type sound. For electronic hip hop sound, we're going to choose synth bass. Now within that, there's lots of good bass sounds. If you have a look through all of these and try playing them, there's lots of really good sounds that can work really well. I'm going to start with this one here, the modern hip hop bass, because it sounds quite good on this style of track, but you're very welcome to use different ones as well. Now we want this to be low, so if you're playing it with your keyboard in school, you're going to want to use the left hand side of the keyboard. If you are playing at home, you might want to move the octave down so you've got the very lowest notes. Let's have a listen. There we go, so that's some low bass. So we're going to try and add in some bass. Now, you need to be careful about what notes you use for your bass. Think about the chords that you played when you did your chords part. Mine used an A minor chord, and then it went down to a G chord, and then it went to an F chord. Okay, so it used 3 different chords there, but my first chord was an A. Now this kind of bass line can actually work quite well just using 1 or 2 notes if you've got a good sound and you play it with an interesting rhythm. And so thinking about what that first chord is, my first chord's an A. If you were to use that first chord and your sort of your main chord as the starting point, that will give you a good start to creating a bass line. So here's A. It's the letter N on my computer keyboard. So there's an A, which would be on my piano keyboard, the A. I can also find another A, the octave higher. And the sound that sometimes in this kind of bass often does is moving between low A's and low notes and high notes of the same letter like this. That can give quite a good sound for this sort of music. But you can also try and play around with other notes as well. Just make sure you start with the note that's going to be your main note, which your first chord is based on. So because my first chord is an A chord, A, C and E, I'm going to start with an A, and I'm also going to have ready this A here, which was that octave higher as well. And let's try just experimenting and see whether I can make a bass line just using that note A. Let's see. Yeah, I think that was very simple, but I think it does the job of giving it a bit of that kind of low end energy. So let's give it a try. I'm going to press record and I'm going to record in my simple bass line. I'm going to make my part as long as the loop I've already recorded. So it's going to be a 4-bar loop and it's going to finish at the exact same time. Let's try it. Here we go. There we go, and then I stopped it. So I played in a few different notes there. Let's double click on them to have a look at them. There we go. It's actually just the note A, but I played it a couple of different times. Let's quantize that as well, just like I did before. So I'm going to select the notes. There we go, all the way to the end. I'm going to press the quantize button, and I'm actually going to press the 1/8 button just to make sure it's nice and in time. Okay, let's now have a listen and see what it sounds like. So it's quite subtle and in the background, but it gives it this extra energy that your piece might not have otherwise. And I'm going to loop that so it happens at the same time. So have an experiment with making up your bass line. Mine uses just the 1 note, but yours doesn't have to. It might use other notes as well. It might use other white notes around this one here. Try coming up with a nice interesting riff that could go beneath your main chord part. You can also try playing around with different sounds as well. I've used this modern hip hop bass, but try the others because they'll give your bass line a really different sound as well.